For those of us who have a son or a daughter, imagine that point in life when you first found out that women, you were pregnant, or men, that your wife was pregnant. That first time. Can you remember that day, what went through your mind when you found out, I'm going to be a parent? I remember it like it was yesterday. I'm actually laying in bed on a Saturday morning in the first house my wife and I bought. It was a little 1,500 square foot house in LaPorte, Texas. Now, Jennifer and I had decided that we were going to try to have kids. And she woke up Saturday morning early, excited, so she went in the bathroom and took a pregnancy test. I think was aware of this, but it's like 5 a.m. on a Saturday morning. So I go back to sleep. She bursts out of the bathroom. There's a bun in the oven. There's a bun in the oven. I go, oh, what? And she's celebrating. She's excited. She, of course, kind of sits back on the bed, and she's just the glow is already on her. And I lay back, and I'm trying to relax, and my brain starts to go, what have I done? I'm gonna be a father. Oh my goodness, there's gonna be diapers to change, and they're gonna want food, and we're gonna have to teach them how to do things, and then they're gonna grow up, and I'm picturing the son, and oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to teach him how to play baseball, then he's gotta wait to get him into college, and what if it's a girl? There's gonna be boys. And then there's going to be a wedding. Oh, none of those boys are going to be good enough. I've known I'm going to be a father for 5 minutes, and every boy on planet Earth was my mortal enemy. This is actually all a true story. I remember laying there that morning, overcome with anxiety, because now it just got real. And this is what it was like for someone who was trying to have a baby. Imagine it was much different for Betty. Betty was 29 years old in 1974. She had grown up a part of a devout Catholic family here in Dallas. She was one of 9 kids. And Betty got married shortly, right out of college. In fact, basically her last year in college, got married. And went into her first marriage, and that marriage didn't go well. And about the age of 28, Betty was getting out of that first marriage, had moved in with her grandmother, and was living with her grandmother in 1979 when she met Jim. Jim was 26 years old at the time. And Jim had grown up in Dallas as well, had graduated from UT Arlington, was teaching physics, and also had gotten married at a very young age. And like Betty, his first marriage didn't work out. And Jim was living with his brother in 1974. Both Betty and Jim divorces were not final, but they had already moved out. The separations were going on, and Betty and Jim started dating. In April of 1974, Betty finds out that she's pregnant. And she calls Jim and she says, Jim, I'm pregnant. And Jim and Betty talk about it. They get together and they decide there's no way we can handle this. And Betty was part of a devout Catholic family. They were absolutely not going to accept an unwed mother having a baby. Jim's divorce was not final. This was going to be embarrassing. It was going to be awful. So they decide that they're going to have an abortion. And they schedule the abortion for the following week. A few days go by. Betty's thought about this. She prays about this. She calls Jim. And she says, Jim, I can't do it. They talk about this for a little while, and Jim just says, well, Betty, we'll do whatever you want to do. No questions asked. We're going to do whatever you want to do. 9 months later, January 11th, 1975, I pop out into the world. Now, I was one of these kids growing up, attended Cistercian, for those of you in the room, taught by Hungarian monks, and I am sure I'm one of those kids that absolutely, if there are kids that made parents question their decision to have a child, I was one of them. You know, I actually didn't get a chance to talk to Mom much about that experience. Mom is still alive today, but she has Alzheimer's, and she's fading quickly, and one of my regrets is I never got to really ask Mom about that decision, what was going through her mind. But I can tell you this, that the couple of times in life where we did talk about it, and when I remember her telling me the story of, just a few days beforehand, a couple days beforehand, deciding not to, canceling that appointment, I remember that she always smiled when we talked about it, but she was always solemn. I talked to my father about this just over the last couple of weeks because I was going to give this talk with you. And I asked Dad about this. Dad, when Mom made that decision, when she called you, was that a religious decision or was that a personal decision? And he says, son, I think it was 50-50. I think that her spiritual beliefs, her religious beliefs, she didn't want to go against, but just as much, there was a baby growing inside her. And that was all that really mattered. It was interesting in my life how that story plays out. When you think about the decision to bring a child into this world and the things I've been able to do and the fantastic introduction that you gave me, I think also when we talk about life, about the impact that life and those decisions have on the mothers. I'll tell you another story. It was just a few years ago. I was at Pinnacle, the company that my wife and I started, and I'd heard one of the young women working there was pregnant. And I ran into her in the lunchroom, and I walked in and I said, hey, so I hear that you're pregnant. Congratulations. And she says, thank you. And I said, are you okay? And she didn't answer me. She started to tear up. And so I asked her, why don't we step into the conference room? Nobody was in the conference room. I close the door, I sit down with her, and I say, are you okay? And she says, Ryan, this wasn't on purpose. I've only been dating this guy a little while, and I got pregnant. And I'm going to have the baby, but I'm worried. And I said, I totally get it. I can imagine how hard that is for you. What are you worried about? And she says to me, I'm not kidding. She says to me, Ryan, what kind of chances does a child coming into this world have if they're an accident? And I lean over and I said, you're talking to one. And you should have seen her light up when I said that. And I shared the whole story about my mom and everything. I said, look, man, we never know what's going to happen. Because she had already made the decision, I said, look, I'm not an expert on abortion or the impact that has on people, specifically on the women who make those decisions, but I can guarantee you're going to be happy about the decision you've made. Getting ready for my talk tonight, I actually wanted to look up a little bit because I think about what would it be like for a woman today? Let's say a woman out there, just like Betty, just like my mom, gets pregnant, and she's worried about the reaction that the world will have to her. And she says, I don't know what I'm going to do about this. And imagine when you think about the anxiety I had when I was trying to, on purpose, my wife and I were married, imagine the anxiety that she has. Where will she go? Unfortunately, the world around us, specifically the worlds of politics and the media, have turned the discussion of life into something of vitriol. And I think that must terrify a woman out there who's in that situation. Terrified that she could go talk to her family or to her friends or to some group that may be pro-life. Will I be judged, she may think. And so she ends up at some facility where they counsel her through the medical procedures that can be done as opposed to the spiritual or the psychological discussion of what this means to her. I looked up a bit of data, and I'll tell you, I'm not an abortion expert, but I got to share. I looked up a bit of data that I want to share with you. This was from a study that was done in 2011. And in this study, they evaluated 877,000 women. 164,000 of them had had an abortion. And what they found is women who had experienced an abortion had an 81% increased chance of mental illness. They had a 34% more likely, they were 34% more likely to develop an anxiety disorder, 37% more likely to experience depression, 110% more likely to abuse alcohol, 155% more likely to commit suicide, and nearly 10% of all of the mental illness issues in the discussions with women were indirectly or directly related to their decision to have an abortion. So these days when we talk about pro-life, we are absolutely talking about the life that's growing inside that mother, but we are also talking about the life of the mother herself and the decisions she would make. I think about my mom, and when I talked to my dad about it, and I asked him, Dad, I remember that Mom seemed kind of solemn when she talked about this. And you know what? Despite the fact that she made the decision to have me, I think she felt guilty for even considering it. Dad told me sometimes, I said, Dad, did y'all ever talk about it much? And he said, you know, every once in a while you'd be doing something, and I assume I was either doing something really funny or really stupid. And Dad would say, they'd joke, you know, that boy almost didn't exist. And Dad could giggle, but Mom couldn't. That even considering it left a mark on her. So imagine if she would have gone through with it. How many women are out there today that are struggling with decision? They've got that anxiety. What message will they hear from us? You know, we in the pro-life community, we're at our best when they know, regardless of what they do, we're going to love them. Right? We can't, if you haven't been in that situation, we can't understand the anxiety that you're feeling. But God bless, we want to help you. And we want you to consider the long-term impacts of what you're going to do. And maybe one other little statistic. Right now, you talk to adoption societies, they'll tell you there are 2 million families in the United States looking to adopt. There's only 135,000 kids available for adoption. So the 600,000 babies that were aborted last year, there's a home for every one of them. So let me close with this. I am not an abortion expert, and I don't understand the statistics. If I ever get a chance to talk to a woman who's considering it, I hope that the Lord will give me the right words to say, to make her feel loved, to make her feel helped, supported. But my message would be 3 things. 1, keep in mind that the decision and the ramifications of having an abortion may very well be much worse and much heavier than the decision to have a child. 2, as a person who was almost aborted, I can guarantee you there's not a day goes by that I'm not thankful that my parents made the decision to have me. And number 3, I can also guarantee there's not a day goes by that they're not thankful they made the exact same decision. Thank you very much for letting me spend my time with you this evening. Y'all have a great night.